Before I get into my PowerPoint, I'm going to show you a short video from the National Safety Council. And what I want you to focus on is what they talk about with hands-free use of phones in vehicles, like Bluetooth and speakerphone. And the other thing is some of the big liability claims that are occurring to businesses just like yours, where the employee was following the company policy and they were following the letter of the law in the state that they were in, and they still had multi-million-dollar claims against them. Some of those claims that you're going to see in here are almost 10 years old now, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Juries all over this country are reacting very strongly to distracted driving cell phone crashes. They're awarding very, very large damage amount. Any employer that does not have an enforced ban on cell phones are putting their company at financial risk.
Many distractions exist while driving, but cell phones are a top distraction because of the amount of risk and the time that drivers spend on the phone every day. Using hands-free devices is not the solution. The National Safety Council has reviewed more than 30 studies that show that hands-free devices don't make driving any safer because the brain remains distracted by the conversation.
911, what is your emergency?
Hi, I have a semi driver. He just ran over a semi. He just ran over a man.
And could you see the driver at all, or did?
Yes.
Did you see where he was looking, or could you tell what he was doing?
I would be 90% positive. I'm thinking he was on the phone.
You think he was on the phone?
Yeah. I think he had earpiece in there. He was talking.
When one of these tragic crashes happen, that indeed the company, from the lowest employee to the highest safety officer in the company, has to answer very hard questions that are impossible to answer effectively, because indeed, without an enforced ban, the company is left to defend something that's indefensible.
Without a best practice cell phone policy, you expose your workers to unnecessary crash risks. At the National Safety Council, we recommend a best practice policy that covers handheld and hands-free devices, all employees, all company vehicles, all company cell phones, and all work-related communications, even in a personal vehicle or on a personal cell phone. You don't want to end up in litigation. You can make our roads safer for everyone by putting a policy in place to eliminate not just handheld use, but the hands-free use of cell phones while driving. It's not just smart business, but most importantly, you're keeping your people safe. For more information, visit nsc.org/policykit. Thank you.
Pretty interesting what they had to say about hands-free. A lot of states are developing, laws for that. We're working on it here in Wisconsin, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. But if you have any questions as we're going through, try to maybe just jot them down, and I'll try to answer those questions at the end. Just want to show a couple of organizations that I work with. Cargill Corporation has 155,000 employees across the globe. 5 years ago, that organization had 4 fatalities, and all 4 were transportation related. All 4 of them were distracted driving. The CEO of the company said, "I am not going to another employee funeral." And they established a policy just basically that mimics what the National Safety Council just said. No use of phones in the car other than GPS, and it has to be set up prior to their traveling. That's for all their salespeople, all their mid-sized trucks, all their heavy trucks, everybody. And they've eliminated the transportation-related fatalities. Ecolab, same thing. They're a pretty large company in St. Paul, Minnesota. I sat next to the national sales director with Ecolab on an airplane flight, and we were talking about distracted driving because that's what I talk about with everyone. And he's like, "Yeah, we've got this policy where we can't use our phones in the car." And I'm looking at him like, "You're the sales director for the company, and you seem excited about it." And he goes, "Well, we're saving lives." And I'm going, "Well, okay, I'm a safety geek. I get it. You know, what about sales and revenue and all that? Because how do we deal with, you know, calling people, calling our customers, calling our employees in the field, all that?" He said, "It's funny because with customers, at least, we're getting increased revenues in sales because we put out office messages on our phone saying, 'Hey, I can't take the call right now because I'm driving. I'm going to call you back as soon as I can. I'm trying to be safe, not only for myself, but for you and your family and your employees. So I'll get back to you as soon as I can.'" Their customers appreciated that. A lot of their customers are asking them for their policies so they can institute it. The CEO of Cargill said the same exact thing. We're actually getting increased revenues from this. It changed the way we did business. We check our messages before we leave. Most of our employees don't drive that far. 15 minutes, half an hour, maybe an hour, even if it's longer. Most of us old people, we can't drive for very long without getting out and use the restroom or getting some gas or, you know, check. And then when we stop, we check messages. How many things can't wait that half an hour or an hour? Not too many. Federated Insurance, large insurance company. The president of Federated Insurance was in the Minnesota Senate testifying, and he said that in 2018, 50% of all their commercial auto losses for that insurance company were distracted driving related. 50%. It's a lot higher than what you're hearing on the news about, you know, 10% or whatever. And if you actually put your phone down and you pay attention to what everybody else is doing on the road, I don't think anybody can argue, because you look around and everybody else is, you know, got their face buried doing something, FaceTiming, Facebook, texting, emailing, phone calls, whatever. Cummins Diesel has a similar policy. API Group, they're a large construction company in Minnesota. They have about 50 operating businesses across the United States. They implemented what they call cell control, which is a hard system. It's a little box that mounts on the windshield or on the visor, and it blocks the cell signal for all their employees, executives right down to all their field folks. Very profitable company. Not having a problem with it at all. And I say, are you nervous? 90% of people think they're good drivers. 63% will use their phone in the vehicle at one time or another. You can't be a good driver if you're using your phone. What about pedestrians, motorcyclists, bikers? Some of you are probably bikers. I grew up in Milwaukee. I've had several bikes, including a couple Harleys. Bikers have a vested interest in getting this thing under control because they don't stand a chance against some of these cars and trucks out there. And if you, just by chance, I had a couple guys in one of my presentations a month ago that were from Hawaii. And they said that if you go to Hawaii on vacation, they're having such an epidemic problem there with tourists getting hit, that if you're a distracted pedestrian in Hawaii, walking across the street looking at your phone, it's a $125 fine. And the second offense is $225, just so you know. I don't want to see any of you getting busted over there. Compare that to the law that we just passed, the hands-free law in Minnesota. They just passed over there. That's $50 for the first offense, plus court costs. Bicyclists, same thing. Don't stand a chance. So my name is Tom Goeltz. This is my beautiful daughter, Megan Goeltz. And Megan was killed by a distracted driver in Stillwater, Minnesota on February 29th, 2016, Leap Day. 30 years as a safety consultant, I couldn't even save my own daughter. That's why I volunteered to come here today and talk to you. This is too late for me and my family, but it's not too late for you. Megan was a lot stronger than I was. And I can tell you, she's going to be talking through me the rest of the day. She was a cheerleader in Hudson, Wisconsin, where I live. Her death impacted my family, my community, my church, another church down here in Brookfield that I'm doing a presentation at tonight, my employer, my customers, and now all of you are being impacted. It doesn't always happen to somebody else. Think about that the next time you want to pick up the phone and call one of your employees or call your kid when you know that they're driving, or pick up a call or a text from your kid. Everybody says, oh, you know, these are so important. Are they more important than your life? I don't think so. But you know who it impacted the most? That little girl right there that she's holding. That's my granddaughter, Paisley, who was 3 years old when her mama died. She's not even going to remember her mom. Think about that. Are you willing to put your life on the line? Are you willing to kill a young woman whose kids got to grow up without a mama now? It happens all the time. There's 40,000 people that are getting killed on our roads in the United States. 40,000 the last 3 years. You know, for 50 years, the death rates on our roads were declining. 50 years. Think about what vehicles looked like 50 years ago. I mean, I've restored some muscle cars, and some of those cars didn't even have seat belts in them. And they had lap belts and shoulder belts, and they built cocoons in the car so they'd withstand rollover crashes. They got airbags in there, you know, 1 and then 2 and then a whole bunch now. They got technology now. Some of that technology is really good and safe. Some of it's touted as safety technology, and it's very, very dangerous. We'll talk about that here. But all of a sudden in 2009, that death rate, which had been dropping for 50 years, stopped dropping, leveled off for a few years, and now it's increasing again. In 2008, we had mass adoption of the smartphone. This thing is so powerful. Get emails on here, you get phone calls, texts, Snapchats, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media. And people are addicted to it. You know, I never grew up with one of these things. You know, I sat in a car, I didn't have my seatbelt on when I was in high school, or my girlfriend sat right next to me without any seatbelt on. That was the biggest danger that we had, I think. We didn't have this distraction. I can't imagine being a 17-year-old right now, and I get a text from my girlfriend when I'm driving down the road. What I would do. How do you turn that off for the kids? You know what? And the kids, when I talk to the kids, they blame it on us, the adults, because they see us using the phone in a vehicle when they're in the back seat all the time. Think about that and how good of a role model that you're being for your kids. And I'll be honest with you, I was a terrible role model. You know, I was a safety consultant. I could drive safely and never got in an accident. The 20 years that I drove distracted. When my daughter died, I quit that thing cold turkey. You know what? And it was just like quitting smoking or drinking or chewing tobacco or anything else that you're addicted to. It was chewing tobacco for me. I mean, I quit chewing tobacco 20 times before I actually quit. Probably more than that. People will keep doing it. You'll listen to this presentation and maybe stop using the phone for a while, some of you, and then you'll get back into it again. You need to stop, because something's going to happen out there. Maybe when you leave here, maybe next week, maybe next month, but it's going to happen. When the next time you go to a ballpark like Miller Park, you know, we don't have any games there anymore. I was watching a Brewer game the other night when they lost. Actually, 4 in a row. I don't want to get into that. But next time you go to a Brewer game, I went to one of the playoff games last year when they were playing the Dodgers. Game 6, they won. But I went to that game, and I looked around at all those people in the stands, like 43,000 people. It was a maximum capacity. And I thought, that's how many people die on our roads in the United States every year, 43,000. Every one of you knows somebody that's died on our road. I know dozens, high school buddies, people that are, you know, neighbors, coworkers, past coworkers that have died. I hope none of you have lost family members. in a preventable crash. Some interesting statistics, and I won't bore you with too much of this stuff. Take a look at that. You know, as a safety consultant, I go work with construction companies all the time. I would go out into the job sites and I'd talk to the guys and I'd work with the employees out there. And I'd ask them what kind of concerns they had, and it was always stuff on the job. You know, I got to get down in this trench. I got fall protection issues. Stuff fell off the building. Never the drive to the job site. But the potential for dying in construction or general industry or anything, got the greatest potential just driving to work. Just driving to work in the morning or driving to the job site. 2 out of every 5 OSHA fatalities are related to transportation. There's over 40 or 4,000 DOT crashes each year that result in fatalities. It's the #1 killer of teenagers. Some of you have teenagers probably that are getting their license or just got it. You know, and every state has different requirements for new drivers, teen drivers. Some of them, they don't allow the use of cell phones at all. Some of them, they have curfews. Some of them where the other kids can't be in the vehicle with them. Those controls that the state mandates are not controlling the exposure to our kids. We as parents and adults need to have additional controls, additional training for the kids. Think about how bad drivers we were when we first got our license. I mean, we were textbook smart. We knew the laws probably better than we do now. But you learn as you start driving. And you got to experience some of the things. And sometimes when you make mistakes, especially these kids now with all the distractions, they're going to tell you, no, I'm not using it. But a lot of them do. A lot of us do. We're being that bad role model. There's lots of forms of distraction. People ask me about that all the time. What's the difference? You know, I mean, you're changing the knob on the radio station, or putting a CD in, we're talking to passengers. What's the difference between talking to a passenger and talking on the phone to that same person? Big difference. There's a big difference. A lot of times those passengers are other drivers, and they help us drive. If I pull up to an intersection and I look both ways, if I look that way and my wife's in the car, she will look that way too. And she will say, it's clear, you can go, or wait for that red truck. Because she knows there's a pillar there, her head's there. There's a pillar going to the back seat. There's lots of blind spots that can hide pedestrians and small cars and motorcycles. She knows that, so she helps me. That person on Siri, that person that's texting us and phone calls, that is not, they don't help us. They just keep us more cognitively distracted. I get people asking me, well, okay, you know, some of these stoplights around here are pretty long. I got to sit there for 4 minutes, 3 minutes. It seems like 10 minutes, right? It's usually only about a couple minutes, but can I look at the phone then? Because I'm stopped. All the studies about that indicate that if you look down at your phone for over 2 seconds to check a message, it takes you over 20 seconds to reorient yourself 360 degrees around you. 20 seconds. So that light turns green and you go through that intersection. How far do you get down the road before you figure out what's going on around you? Pretty far. And we all know that once that light turns green and we go through that intersection, we have the right of way. It's good. We're good, right? We don't have to do anything else. We don't have to look, because that oncoming traffic that's driving down that state highway at 50 miles an hour, which is the speed limit, and people go over that, they're always going to stop at those red lights, right? Some of the more catastrophic crashes are when they don't. And we all are familiar with those. The last one there, what about, you know, when the average text takes about 4 or 5 seconds to read or respond to. You're looking down for 4 or 5 seconds, you're driving 55 miles an hour, you travel a whole football field with your head down. I just drove over from Milwaukee this morning. How many people do you think were driving 55 miles an hour on I-94? Not too many. Some of them were going almost twice that speed, flying by me like I was standing still. And I was going about 70, 75 in the misty rain. You look down when you're going 70, 75, 80, it's about 2 seconds and you travel that whole football field. My next slide is a semi driver. It's a video I pulled it off of a local news station. It's a local crash. Video, the semi-driver's got a dash cam in his truck, and he's talking about the dump truck that's driving next to him.
Recording in the windshield of his semi.
I was just having a beautiful day listening to the radio, and I seen that dump truck kind of swerve a little bit back a mile or so, so I kind of knew he was fiddling with something probably.
And seconds later,
And I knew what was going to happen, but there was nothing I could do about it other than get my truck stopped so I didn't get tangled up in it. I left like 150.
That dump truck was unloaded. Could you imagine if he had a load of sand or gravel, what he would have done? He wasn't even paying attention. He hit the brakes like 5 feet before he hit those cars, and he was driving about 55 miles an hour. If he was loaded, he would have went right through them cars, right through the semi, and about 10 more cars probably before he came to a stop. Nobody was killed in that video. Amazing. But that's what happens in distracted driving related crashes. People don't slow down before they hit you. You know, I'm watching right out here, and the traffic is all getting backed up because it's getting rush hour time. You know, and these people are looking down at their texts, and they're coming barreling in at 70 miles an hour. And they are going to crash into the pile. It happens every day in the state of Wisconsin, every single day. Our vehicles are not designed to crash at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. They're designed to crash at 30, 40 miles an hour. And if you don't slow down, people are going to die. People are dying. Very fast rates. Distraction, 3 different ways: visually, manually, and cognitively. The hands-free law that a lot of states are passing, Minnesota just passed it into law August 1st, helps. Those hands-free laws help with visual and manual. Helps keep our eyes on the road, helps keep our hands on the wheel. It doesn't help at all with the cognitive part. That's the problem. And the visual and manual, unfortunately, as part of the distracted driving equation, that's only about 15 to 20% of crashes and serious injuries and fatalities. The 80% is associated with the cognitive. So why are we doing hands-free laws then? Because people like me go to legislators and they go, we want to have a complete ban of phones in vehicles for the state of Wisconsin. Guess what? We can't get any one of them, anybody, to write a bill for that. They won't do it because so many people would be up in arms and against it. But they will consider a hands-free bill. They'll consider that. In Minnesota, they did that recently. I live on the border. I spent a lot of time in Minnesota working, and so I was involved in that process. Wisconsin, we're working on it too. Multitasking. People think they can multitask, do 2 things at the same time. I'm here to tell you that you can't. You can't drive and talk on the phone, hands-free, at the same time. Your brain toggles back and forth between the 2 tasks. And you make mistakes when you're doing both things, and you do things a lot slower. Your reaction time is a lot slower. And I need somebody to help show me how difficult it is to multitask. So who wants to help do that? I've got a nice prize that you can win if you can beat the system. Can you come up here, please? Let's see if I get the technology right. Good.
Hey, look at all those people.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Some of them probably
Oh, hey,
know.
Brent's down there.
Somebody probably know who you
That
are.
Never Loverland, upper left, those 2 right there.
So what I want you to do, and by the way, you want to know what the price is? I know you're not interested, but I bet you all them are.
I've got a sister that had the same way you're talking about.
Really?
Long before cell phone stuff.
Sorry about that. But your prize is, I do a lot of flying, so I've got a lot of miles points. I'm going to give you a trip to Hawaii. See, aren't you guys disappointed you didn't volunteer now? You got to beat the system. even if you don't beat the system, I've got some nice consolation prizes for you. So what I want you to do is 3 things I'm going to have you do. The first one is I want you to count from 1 to 10 as fast as you can, and I'm going to time you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. See if we can go faster than me. Ready? Go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Good. 1.63 seconds. That's pretty fast. I had a senior in high school last week do it in 0.94 seconds. Just saying. All right, now maybe you can improve on that time. 1.63, remember that. So now I want you to do the alphabet. A through J. You don't have to go through the whole thing.
You sound like that guy that I met about 3 o'clock in the morning.
A through J. And I want you to say it out loud as fast as you can. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. I'm going to time it for this too. Ready? Go.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J.
2.88 seconds. That was really slower.
That was a lot slower.
Yeah.
I was trying to go like really fast and then I got lost.
At least I didn't ask you to do it backwards, right? True, at least. Okay, so now this is the test. So 2.88 seconds and 1.63. If you add those two together, I went to school in Whitewater, so my arithmetic. Sorry, anyway. That's what, about 4.5 seconds roughly. So if you can do this faster than 4.5 seconds, you win that trip to Hawaii.
What do you think? Well, it's a public. Come on, everybody wants a game show.
I want you to do the numbers and the letters concurrently, like 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5, 6, from 1 to 10, A to J. And if you get muddled up a little bit, keep plowing through it because I'm timing you. You got to get it in 4.5 seconds.
That one, okay.
Ready? Go.
1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, 6F, 7G, 8H, 9I, 10J.
Very good. Wow. Wow. You know what? I've probably done this presentation 300 times, and there's less than 10 people that can actually get through it without making a mistake. You were one of them.
I'm from Western Wisconsin like you are. I think we're just a little more. I'm from Eau Claire. You're more okay.
Yeah, Claire, you're still in Wisconsin. Once you get west of Eau Claire, nobody considers that Wisconsin anymore.
West of Baldwin, y'all are in Minnesota. Does he want to lie?
9.26 seconds.
I get to go to Stout.
But I do have some nice consolation prizes for you. A couple things. I've got a wrist brace. I wear a lot of these wrist braces to try to help spread the word about this. This is a brace that says text or call can end it all. Some people don't like to wear these things. We can't wear them for safety reasons or whatever. Our wrists are big. You can put it in your vehicle. You want that, don't you? You can put it in your vehicle, and then if you get in your vehicle, you can wrap it around your phone and maybe remind you not to use your phone in the car. The other thing I'll just mention before I give it to you is that these glow in the dark, and my wife will attest that they glow all night long. So there you go. I got 2 other things for you, so don't go anywhere. Okay, this is what they call a cell slip. A guy in Sartell, Minnesota developed these things. His family was hit by a distracted driver. He got so mad about it that he came up with this design. It's a little pouch. It can go on the seat of your vehicle. It's made out of space age, real soft material, and you put your phone in there. And you zip it up like that, and it blocks the signal. So you don't have to turn your phone off. You can keep your phone on. And then when you take it out, it grabs all your messages. When you get to your destination, you can make a call. You don't have to wait for your phone to boot back up if you end up turning it off. But these are called cell slips. You can get them in different colors. We have our logo on here. You can put your own logo on there. If you go to the website, they're about $15 a piece. But if you buy them through a victim's advocate like me, or if you're a nonprofit like schools or driver's ed classes, they get about $3 each. So pretty cheap. There's that. And one more thing. Bumper sticker. Don't text and drive, and you see my car out there. It's got one of these on there.
Is that Ruby?
Yes, it is. It's,
I'm a biker as well.
it's Hoopy and Abraham. So they are, they've had a bunch of commercials on for distracted driving, and my connection with them is I went to high school with Jason Abraham. And a funny story is that he was a year younger than me in school, and we were both on the football team back then. And I was the starting safety as a senior, and he was a backup quarterback. And during practice, we played against the starting defense against the second string offense. And I slaughtered him on safety blitzes multiple times. So you see him on the air, and I always think about the times that I smashed him. So, some of us will want to hit a lawyer every once in a while. I have to
You have to do that.
Yeah. So give him a round of applause. Thank you very much. Inattention blindness. It's called inattention blindness. You could be looking right out your windshield and talking on your Bluetooth, and you're more engaged with that conversation, and you don't even see what's happening in front of you. You don't notice what's going on. I was doing a presentation for a large utility company, and one of the managers got up and he said, "Hey, I got to stop you here. This happened to me just last week," which is now it's a couple of years ago, but we had some bad storms just like recently in Wisconsin. They had all their linemen out in the field restoring power, and had a very, very long day. He was driving home. He was on I-94. He had worked for the company for 30 years, living in his house for the same amount of time, driving that same route. Got a call from one of his linemen, and they were troubleshooting a problem. And they were talking. He was talking to him on hands-free, and all of a sudden he said to the lineman, "Hey, I gotta let you go. I got a problem here." And the lineman said, "What's the matter?" And he goes, I missed my exit." And he goes, "Are you okay?" And he's driving along, and he goes, "Well, don't tell anybody." But now he told me, and I'm telling thousands of people. So he says, "Don't tell anybody, but I missed my exit 16 miles ago." I just kept going. And I was so engrossed in that conversation that I didn't really notice where I was until all of a sudden something happened. I saw a landmark, and it, boom, came back. How many times do you drive someplace and don't remember the drive? It happens very frequently. And a lot of stuff can happen. People think, I'll be driving back up to Hudson, Wisconsin on I-94, and I'm in open country that, I can be driving through there and I can get on my phone and talk to people because nothing's around there. You know what? There are things that are around there. There's animals, there's deer, there's turkeys. There's all kinds of things that could be on the road. There's people that break down in their vehicle and maybe looking for help. They could be walking along the road. I saw somebody this morning in Sussex where I was on a 2-lane with very little shoulder, and there was a guy running. He had a reflective coat on. He had a headlight on and a little flashing in the back, but I was going 45. I was going the speed limit. I came over this hill, and there he was. I mean, and I swerved a little bit, but somebody who's not paying attention could be into that shoulder a little bit and nail them. And that happens all the time. This is normal driving. In a normal driving situation, you see the big picture. You see that school bus there with the stop sign out. This car is blowing by the school bus. I don't know if any of you have driven bus before or worked for a school bus company, but I've got a couple of them that I work with as a safety consultant, and the drivers say this stuff happens all the time. We hear about it on the news when some little boy or girl gets killed. That's when we hear about it, but it happens daily in our state. When you got hands-free driving, you've got tunnel vision. That's what's happening. You see what's going on in that tunnel. Everything else doesn't matter. You're not looking in your mirrors. That's why those cars that are driving next to you on the road, they can come into your lane because you're not even there. They didn't look at you. They're talking to their customer. They're talking to their employees. They're talking to their kids. They're more important than you are. So they can swerve into your lane because you're not there. That's not even a school bus. That's a city bus. That car is just making a left-hand turn. But you know what? You don't even know. They don't exist. You don't see them. This is probably the most important slide in my presentation. This is why we have such a problem and an epidemic right now. Because those little buzzes that we get and those noises that we hear, and for phone calls and texts and notifications, release a chemical in our brain called dopamine. When that happens, it gives us a pleasurable experience. It's a euphoria. It feels good. It feels good to look at those messages and get those messages. And they might be important, right? It's an addiction. Just like I talked about with smoking. A lot of people can't quit cold turkey. They quit and they get back into it all the time. This happens to me. Let me show you how it even happens to me right now. In February of this year was the 3-year anniversary of Megan dying. And I was sitting in my living room watching a hockey game, and I uploaded some nice pictures of Megan and I to Facebook, and I shared it with her friends, with my friends, my wife's friends. Put the phone on my lap on vibrate, and guess what? About every 5 seconds, I got a notification. Bzz, bzz. Somebody from high school that I used to go to high school with, some of Megan's friends, some of my wife's friends, some people, coworkers, some people from church, they would give me a notifications, thumbs up, or, hey, we're thinking about you, Tom. We know this is a bad time of the year for you. Thank you for getting out and trying to spread the word and make a little difference with this. Every time I had to look immediately. And you know what? It made me feel good to see those responses. That's the dopamine release. That happens in everybody, no matter who you are. You can't stop it. If that phone goes off in the car and I'm driving, I will look at it. I won't look at it to see who it is. I won't answer it, but I will physically look at the phone. My granddaughter, Paisley, comes over to our house periodically. And she came over a couple years ago, and my phone was sitting on the kitchen table, and my wife and I were having a conversation in the kitchen. All of a sudden, Paisley starts holding my hand, and I'm not really paying attention. I feel a little tugging, and I finally look down. She wasn't holding my hand. She had grabbed my phone, and she was sticking my thumb on there to unlock it. And, you know, so when you unlock your phone, all your apps come up, right, like that. So my phone, you know, I look down and my apps are up, and she's holding my phone in her hands. I'm going, what are you doing? And she just looked up at me just for a split second and took the phone and went booking down the hall into the bathroom and locked the door. So I get down there, open the door. She won't open the door. So Papa's got the key to the bathroom. I get in the kitchen, open the drawer, get the key out of there. I got down there, and by the time I got down there, she had 30 selfies of herself on my phone. And she was already off the photograph thing, and she was on another app, and she was playing a game on my phone. And I said, what are you doing there? In fact, it took me about a week to find the photos. But I'm going, what are you doing? What game is that? And she goes, oh, Papa, you got lots of games on here. I go, really? This is my business phone. I had it at the time. I had it for 2 years, and that was a 4-year-old kid. She knew more about this iPhone than I did. And I said, do you have a phone? And she goes, no, I don't have a phone, but I know my dad's password. So, you know, she gets on the phone periodically and knows, you know, those kids figure that stuff out real fast. How are we going to stop that generation from using their phones when they start to drive? How are we going to stop them? Without a full ban of phones or without automated vehicles, we're not. We're just not. And, you know, I don't know about you. I've been kind of, you know, I've got an old 69 GTO that I drive around periodically. I'm not into the newfangled vehicles, but I wish every one of us had one right now, and they were, you know, the technology was up there so we could drive safely, because I think they would drive better than we could manually. But, you know, people that live up here in the north, we got environmental conditions that I don't know. They've got a lot of work to do to figure that kind of stuff out. But I hope they figure it out quick. How many of you remember the old bag phones? Remember those? A lot of you had those. I got one. That was the greatest thing. I didn't have to stop at a gas station and call an underwriter anymore to talk about stuff. And there'd be a line of cars waiting there. You go to hotels and there was a bank of payphones, remember? And they were all full a lot of times you walk in when it was right around dinner time. But look at how they advertise these things. One of these cars is already at the office. You know, the cellular companies and the car companies are making billions of dollars on the technology. All of our vehicles come with all these newfangled technologies now. Some of them are good, some of them aren't so good. And, you know, they're not willing to, I mean, they have the technology to block the signal in the cars, but the problem is that the population doesn't want that technology. So they're not putting it in. In Minnesota, they had the new law just recently, $50 for the first offense, $275 for the second offense. With court costs, it's about $130 and almost $400. One person got busted on the first day twice. Yep, and they busted, I haven't seen a number from all the agencies, but it's probably close to 10,000 people. And I keep getting friends of mine saying, you know, people are still texting when they're driving. Yeah, they're going to still do it. Just because we have a law for that in Minnesota doesn't mean they're going to stop. I mean, we've had laws for speeding for how long? People still speed, right? How does it help? I mentioned the visual manual. It also helps with enforcement, because right now in Wisconsin, you could be having your phone up on the steering wheel and you could be going like this, and that cop pulls you over and you go, well, I was just dialing a phone number. And the cop says, well, let me see your phone. And then the driver could go, well, I'm not going to let you see it. Go get a court order. A lot of times they're not going to do that for just a traffic stop or for a $50 fine or a $25 fine in Wisconsin. If it's a bad crash, yes, they're going to confiscate your phone and they're going to crack it and get into it and look at it. But not for the minor stuff. This way, if you got the phone, if you're holding the phone in your hands with a hands-free law, it's illegal. They can pull you over. It's a primary offense. There was a Minnesota bill for increased penalties that got defeated. So there's still work for us to do over there. That's in Wisconsin where I live. At the same time I was working on the hands-free bill in Minnesota, I was working on a city ordinance for Hudson, Wisconsin. So just so you know, you drive down I-94 to go to Minnesota. In Hudson, we have the same basic, it's an ordinance there for hands-free. So they can bust you for that. $100 fine in Wisconsin for that. I'll tell you, the state of Wisconsin did not like that. The state of Wisconsin does not like it when a little city called Hudson, Wisconsin creates an ordinance that's more stringent than the state law. I was getting calls from, or emails from state attorneys saying, you can't do this, this is unenforceable. And the mayor of Hudson said, you know, well, let them come up here and try to change it. It's kind of like the tail wagging the dog. Fortunately, we weren't doing it for just the ordinance in Hudson, because it is hard to enforce for sure. We wanted to wake up Wisconsin, because Illinois has a hands-free law, Minnesota has a hands-free law, Iowa's working on it, and so is Michigan. Wisconsin defeated it a couple years ago, the bill, and nobody was really working on it. Well, guess what? We've got a hands-free bill that's been introduced to the legislators. It hasn't been introduced to the public yet because they're looking for feedback. It's coming. It's coming in October, hopefully. I was hoping it would be here already and I could talk about it. But it's out there and it's coming. Current Wisconsin laws, texting and driving is prohibited for all drivers, but texting is okay if it's an integrated system in your vehicle. A voice-to-text type system. And let me tell you that those voice-to-text systems, they may be legal, but they are extremely dangerous. And they're touted as safety technologies. And the reason why they're dangerous, they're just as bad as manual texting. The reason why they're dangerous is because when you're using it, and I used to have a car with this and I can vouch for this, a lot of times when you get that text over your heads-up display or your screen in your car, that text comes in and you can verbally say, you know, your response, and the car picks it up. Well, the car doesn't always pick up exactly what you're saying. And it might make some errors in your wording. And guess what? You look at the text before you send it. And then when you look at it, it's like, well, that's not my intent. That's not what I said. So I want to fix it. So guess what you're doing now? You're totally focused on that rather than the drive. It's actually just as dangerous, and if not more so dangerous, than manual texting. No cell phone use in construction zones or for new drivers, teen drivers. GPS and navigation is okay, but you have to set it up. You have to set it up while you're parked, and don't mess around with it. CDL drivers obviously can use one touch and hands-free, federal law. Fines start in Wisconsin at $400 or $20 and go up to $400. What you can't do, even in hands-free, send emails and text when driving, hold the phone in your hand, or even when you're stopped at an intersection. No video streaming, gaming apps. You can't manually dial the phone anymore. It has to be voice actuated. No keying, no scrolling, social media, searching the internet, songs, or podcasts. You can listen to songs, you can listen to podcasts, but you got to set them up before you start driving. You want to have the mounting of the phone so it doesn't block your vision through the windshield. So have it so you're looking at it in the dash or, right on the edge of the windshield there. What you can do, you can place receive calls in hands-free voice or one touch. You can make emergency calls. So you could actually pick up your phone physically, turn it on, and dial 911 for emergencies. That's emergency. Calling your wife or husband because you think there's an emergency. That's not an emergency, according to the law. If you listen to GPS while parked, not held in hand. So you can set up your GPS while you're parked and mount it. If it doesn't get you your destination, you got to pull off to a safe area. And pulling off to a safe area, people tell me all the time, I listen to your presentation, and when I get a phone call, I pull off on the shoulder. That is not safe. The shoulder is not safe. And those of you that work in construction and on our highways, you know that. So police get hit with their lights on all the time by distracted drivers, by drug drivers, by drunk drivers. So unless it's an emergency, get off to a safe area, park. You can listen to music, but you got to have it set up while parked. Bill does not specifically ban the voice to text systems. We can't get that out. Wanted it out, can't get it out. Studies indicate that hands-free, you're just as, oh, I forgot, you said to turn off your phones, right? I guess it didn't apply to the speaker. My wife will have to wait, see? I actually set up my alarm to go off in every one of my presentations to show you how distracting it is. When I introduce myself, I don't tell everybody to turn off their phones because I like it when phones go off in my presentation because it's a distraction to the speaker and everyone else in the room. And that's a perfect example of what we're talking about. But it's just like driving 0.08 drunk. All the studies are showing that talking with your Bluetooth is just like 0.08. So when I see people talking on their phone or looking down in their lap or texting, I think of those people as drunk drivers. We all know we have a problem with drunk driving still. We've come a long way, but we still do. We have a choice to drink and drive. We have a choice to text and use phone calls and drive. If you look at the cars that are involved in fatal crashes, in drunk driving cases, guess what? They look exactly the same as the cars that are involved in fatal distracted driving crashes. The first fine for drunk driving in Wisconsin with court costs is roughly $1,000. You can get a distracted driving offense and get a $20 fine right now in the state. Crashes are 4 times more likely when using hands-free and hands-held, and 20 times more likely when texting or looking at the internet. I've had a phone for 20 years. I've gotten one important phone call, and I've got a lot of important clients. I've had a lot of important employees reporting to me, all my kids, my wife, my family, friends. None of those are important. I got one important call. That was when Regions Hospital in downtown St. Paul called and said, your daughter's been in a crash You need to get down here immediately. And guess what? I was sitting in my living room at the time. I wasn't even driving. I've never gotten an important call or text when I was driving. Not something that's more important than in my life. That's the stop sign that Megan was stopped behind when she got killed. Now we have a cross at that intersection. You drive around the state, you look around at all the crosses that are sitting in the rural areas and intersections and whatever. They're all over the place. You probably know some of those people. I never gave them much thought in the past, but now every one that I pass, I think about that because people died there. My granddaughter will never have her mother to take her trick-or-treating. She will never be able to take pictures with her again. I talked about the voice detect system already. This is February of 2016, a couple days before the crash. We had some warm days. Probably it was warm down here too, if you remember that. But in Hudson, we had some warm days. The snow was melting, and Paisley and I were washing Megan's car, getting it nice and clean. This is a picture from the Minnesota State Patrol Reconstruction Report. This is Highway 95, and Highway 95, if you cross the Hudson Bridge into Minnesota, Highway 95 is immediately right there. It runs right along the river. It heads north into Stillwater. It's a 2-lane, 55-mile-an-hour state highway. The other vehicle was traveling north. He crossed over the center line of the road, went into the shoulder on the other side of the road, went into the ditch on the other side of the road, rode through the ditch for about 80 feet, came upon the secondary road where Megan was parked behind the stop sign. He went up that embankment there, launched his vehicle. His car hit Megan's car about halfway up her door. Megan's car ended up on its side. His car went over the top of her car into the woods on the other side of the road, traveled about another 75 feet. All told, his vehicle traveled 347 feet. There were no skid marks at all. They estimated that his car hit Megan's car, traveling all that way. He was still moving at 54 miles an hour. So I don't know what speed he was at when he started. But either if he was going, let's say it was a 55, if he was going 60, 65, and he did all that and he didn't, he maybe sped up through the ditch or whatever. I don't know. Nobody knows. He never admitted anything. That's a 2010 Ford Fusion. They don't make convertibles. That's where Megan died. And my granddaughter, if she would have been in the car, she'd be dead too. Megan's buried about a quarter of a mile from where she went to high school. Mama's special spot. That's what my granddaughter calls it. She used to like to play in the dirt like it was a sandbox. She was 3 years old at the time, not really understanding what was going on. We finally got a monument, and what it says underneath Megan's name, it says, "Loving mother of Paisley May, an unborn baby." Because Megan was pregnant at the time of the crash, and I lost a grandson, a little guy that should be 3 years old right now, and I should be holding him rather than talking to you about this stupid subject. But here I am. So what can you do? So I know they told you to turn off your phones or silence them, but I want you to take out your phone right now, and I want you to take a picture of this slide. Because what's important is right down here on the bottom. Emailing, writing, or calling your representative. This is the website that you can go to in Wisconsin, and it'll pull you up to a page that you can enter the address of where you live. And it will, once you enter your address and hit return, it'll pull up your state representative, your assembly person, and your senator, your state senator. I really need you guys and gals to send them an email, call them and leave a message, whatever, and say that you're in support of distracted driving related bills. penalty bills, hands-free, whatever it is, because they're not perfect. Hands-free is not risk-free. But if we can save 15 to 20% of Wisconsin drivers that are involved in fatal crashes, you know what, if those family members are part of your family, I think you'd appreciate that. So thank you very much. If you know a principal or a school board member at your kid's school and you'd like for me to come and present, I will do that. I will come and present at schools. I do that all the time. I try to bulk those in with business trips to the area. So, and I travel around the state. So I'll do that. Talk to your friends and family. Don't just think that people like me are going to get all the word out to folks. Like I said, I've given about 300 of these presentations. I probably talked to 75,000 people. That seems like a lot, but what, 6-7 million people live in Wisconsin? 349 million all across the United States. It's just a drop in the bucket. I can't get out there as much, but if all of you tell somebody about this, maybe we can get a little handle on it. Maybe we can't eliminate the problem from a safety standpoint, but maybe we can cut it down by 10% or 15%, or maybe all those calls that you take, maybe you won't take them all if you see that they're not critical. There's apps that are available. Some people like apps. You know, I showed you that cell flip, but you can put your phone on airplane mode. You can turn it off. You can do a lot of things. You can use these apps. I have the new iPhone update on my phone. So if I'm moving faster than 5 miles an hour, which includes like running, my phone sends a message saying that I'm driving and I will not, you know, I'll get back to you when it's safe. We need to make distracted driving socially unacceptable, just like drunk driving is. You know, if I'm out with my buddies and one of them has had too much to drink and he's going to drive, we take the keys. We get him a ride home. We get him an Uber or a cab or whatever. Get somebody to pick him up. If that same buddy is talking on his phone as he's walking out to his car, talking to his kids or his wife, we don't do anything. Actually, I do. I do say something. I'll stand in front of his car till he gets off the phone. I said, you're not driving until you get off. It's an educational thing for me, but not too many people do that. There's my contact information. If you want to contact me, I have business cards too. You can stop up after I'm done to talk about it. I'm going to end with this. This is a video from a person by the name of JC Good. It's a YouTube video. She's another distracted driving advocate out of Pennsylvania. This is a popular video with kids especially, but it resonates with adults as well. And it's pretty popular on YouTube. It's been seen 2.5 million times, and on social media over 25 million times. So a lot of people are watching this thing, so check it out.
So I just confess that I text and drive. If I get a text, I'll look at my phone. It's definitely texting.
Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat. I do Snapchat and drive sometimes.
Is that like making Snapchats or watching them?
Making them.
Texting is like my main form of communication.
Boredom, honestly.
And B, well, nah, I guess no, it's really just A.
I've only never done it at stoplights. I've always been really good about it.
The passenger has a pretty important role driving now, or they're like, oh, red light, red light.
If someone that you like texts you, you're like, you can't just like let it sit there without just knowing what they said. Because what if something exciting's happening or something happened?
Like every time I do it, I think about it, I'm like, why am I doing this? And then I just keep doing it.
So I'd want to introduce you to a friend of ours.
My name is JC.
Hi, Alexis.
Hi, Dash. Justin, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I just really quickly want to have a chat, tell you what happened to me. When I was 21 years old, driving home from my college graduation ceremony, driver on his phone was so distracted. He turned left into the intersection at a red light. Another car, an 18-wheeler, swerved to miss him and hit my family's car. And the resulting collision actually killed both of my parents. I spent 2 months in the hospital fighting for my own life, and then 2 more months in a rehab hospital, learning how to walk again, learning how to speak again, learning how to dress myself and how to feed myself. I live with a partially paralyzed body. I didn't have my daddy to walk me down the aisle when I got married.
Having sort of like met JC, because you look at JC and sort of give those same reasons.
Oh. Usually I use my phone to change a song on. I try to use it as little as possible, but
I'm not gonna look at my phone ever again. Honestly, if I have been sitting at a red light, I'll like glance down to see if my mom's texting me, but the people's lives that are impacted from something that is so stupid.
I can assure you on my drive home right now, I'm not going to use my phone and drive, and I'm not going to do it when I go to work tomorrow and the next day after that until, it becomes a habit, and that just doesn't happen at all.
I know this is hard. I'm sorry. It's hard for me too, but this is real. You have the power to really actually make a difference and do something about it.
Thank you.
JC, good. I've actually done some conferences with her where we presented together on distracted driving. She's really good. She's the one who taught me about how many victims are involved in these crashes. It's not just me and my family and my friends that are missing Megan, but the other driver involved is a victim in a whole different way. You don't want to be that victim either, having to live with that for the rest of your life. In her case, as a kid on his cell phone, cut off a semi. The semi took evasive action, hit JC's car, killing her parents. She's a beautiful girl, but she's paralyzed on half of her body. On the 4-year anniversary of that crash, the truck driver committed suicide because he couldn't live with himself anymore. And it wasn't even his fault. Don't be a victim. Don't be a victim. This is what my family looked like prior to the crash. That's my son, Gavin. We were watching a football game in Hudson and celebrating a victory. My oldest daughter got married last year. Megan was the maid of honor. A picture, a portrait, a memory. That's all that's left of her now. I know that you're probably thinking, how the heck are we going to change in my company? How am I going to change with my family? Bring in an advocate like me to talk to your senior leadership. We have a lot better percentage track record to get things changed. I mean, I've got policies that I can give you for free that are, cell phone policies without, using them. Talk to your kids. Google Megan's name or my name, and you can see a whole bunch of more crap that I don't have time to talk to you about, all the stuff that we've had to put up with over the last 3 years. The other driver in our case killed 2 people, right? Killed my daughter, my unborn grandson. He got 60 days in jail with work release, 20 hours community service, 2 years probation, and a $500 fine. You can cut down a tree on public property in Minnesota and get a felony charge. You can pay for your kids to go to college at UCLA or another school and pay a tutor to take their test and get felony charges and go to jail for a lot longer. Are you kidding me? What a joke. The same penalties are here in Wisconsin too. So tell your loved ones, don't change for me, change for you and the people that love you, because you know our jobs aren't worth our lives. Thank you very much for letting me come in and talk to you today. Appreciate it.